I'm getting very good polls on crime prevention, on law and order, and on the border. I have to, and I'm starting to get great polls on the economy, which I think
the polls on the economy they're not great.
They should be great.
They should be. So why aren't they? If you believe that,
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. Also, I just said they were great, even though I'm now acknowledging they're not great, and I don't even know why they're not great. Which, yeah, you do, right? I mean, I know that your brain is riddled with like worms and stuff, but you know, the polls are bad because the economy is bad. The economy is worse than it was when they kicked out the previous guy for having an economy that wasn't good enough. So you should kind of accept that. Like that's him, I guess, being forced to acknowledge that the polls are bad. But bear in mind, it was amidst all of the lies that I get great poll on law and order. You know, when they poll 2,000 people, what do you think about Law and Order? And they're all like, well, it's a pretty good series, I guess. A lot of spinoffs, it seems needless to me. No, that's not, no, you're polling negative on every single topic, even topics where I'll say maybe he should be polling better or whatever. Like, let's say that the most important thing to you is like closing down the border or whatever. Okay, well, he did that, I guess. I don't think it's as important of a priority as he does, but he did that. But he's not even doing good on the border comparatively. And when you talk about immigration, which we will more in depth later on, no, he's doing really bad, and he's doing bad on the economy as well. Now, that does not mean that he is going to acknowledge this truly, substantively, learn something from it, express some empathy for the American people. That's not gonna happen. This happened instead.
Americans tell us, we hear this. I mean, we're gonna get into the economy later, but they tell us they don't feel it.
Just so you understand. Yeah. I have $18 trillion being invested into the country. Biden had less than $1 trillion for 4 years, and the whole country was gonna credit. Do you know
when does America feel it?
Do you know that if they won that election, and we won in a landslide, do you know if they won that election, this country I think it was finished.
Yeah, we wouldn't have, we'd have nothing. It'd be gone. We would just be unincorporated territory or whatever. Like, and look, I feel a little bit bad for the NBC News guy because virtually everything Donald Trump says and everything the NBC News guy says, I want to jump in and be like, come on, dude, like you gotta do a better job. But like, how do you pursue the last thing when his response to the last thing is also absolutely mental? So like he says, I'm $18 trillion. And the NBC News guy says, but when do people feel it? Hold up now. Don't just accept the 18 trillion. That's not anything. That's not real. Your answer should have been, I understand that's a number that you're throwing out, but it seems to be based on literally nothing. Even the rest of your administration, which is prone to pro-Trump propaganda, isn't using that number. So he just glosses over it. And like, oh yeah, the country would be done. We'd have no country. This is madness. This is nothing. This is not a guy who is going to acknowledge his faults. It's not a guy who is going to recalibrate, move in a different direction. That's just not how he's going to work. And in this case, look, substantively, that's bad. Politically, kind of good, because the midterms are shaping up to really suck for the Republicans. And this guy keeps reassuring us they're not gonna do anything to stem the tide of people moving away from their movement. And so let's jump into some of what people say about the economy, because Trump wants you to believe that not only is the economy great now, which it's not, we would have all been on fire collectively if Joe Biden or if Kamala Harris had been elected, which is not how people think it. Now, 53% of voters believe the economy is worse today than it was under Biden. 47% say that it's better. So that is how numbers work out, but also that is a 3-point slide for Trump since just December. Now, look, I think that the numbers should be even more against Donald Trump because I don't believe that there's a case to be made that the economy is better off than it was. I think that it is objectively worse off. The jobs numbers are worse. We're gonna show you the inflation numbers are worse. The tariffs are needless. This isn't good for us, but okay, it takes a little bit of time for people to catch up, and they have caught up. The majority now say the economy is worse off than it was under Biden. And again, they kicked the Democrats out because of how they thought the economy was going under Joe Biden. 63% of those surveyed said the current state of the economy was mostly due to the policies of the Trump administration, while 37% attributed it to how Biden ran the country, an 11-point drop since December. So that's not just a bad status quo, that is movement in the wrong direction for Donald Trump. And again, I'll just remind everyone, I know that people don't love charts as much as I did. We just showed you the inflation numbers going back a number of years. It was improving under Biden and it stopped improving when Donald Trump took over. That is not like, don't argue with me about that, argue with the chart about that. But anyway, 6 in 10 independents also say the economy is worse under Trump than it was under Biden. And again, he's not going to pivot. He doesn't seem to think that he needs to. So why? Why do people feel this way? That's how they feel. What are the reasons? Well, as I said, inflation is a big part of it. In December, annual inflation hit 2.7%, with food prices up 3.1% and energy costs up 2.3%, according to what's left of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Last February, prices were up 2.8% relative to 12 months prior, while food prices were up 2.6% and energy costs down 0.2%. Okay, so in February of last year, there was inflation, as you can see. There is still inflation. Sorry, Carolyn Leavitt. Sorry, Donald Trump. And also, it's worse than it was last year. Things are not just worse than they were under Biden, they're worse than they were under Trump previously. You can't keep gaslighting us because we can't afford the gaslight anymore. The prices are too high. But they just keep lying and lying and lying. And the thing is, people feel this stuff. It's not abstract, okay? They feel it every day. They feel it with every bill. They feel it every time they go to the grocery store. And especially they feel it, and I've been trying to focus on this recently, they feel it when it comes to healthcare costs, because that is the top household expense the public are currently worried about. In fact, 1 out of 3 Americans are very worried about the cost of healthcare. Because for some reason, we, despite being the best and the brightest and the strongest and the richest country in the world, just can't seem to figure this thing out. I mean, there's only dozens of examples of other countries around the globe that did figure it out. In fact, decades ago with less resources than we have, but they make it work and we, for some reason, can't. But there are people who worry about a lot of things. Food and groceries, that's a quarter of Americans. Quarter of Americans very worried about rent or mortgage. I mean, we're talking about majority numbers for all of this when you include somewhat worried. And this is not the mark of a golden age. It's the exact opposite of it. You do not want people to be like anxiously stressing over the bare minimum foundational stuff.
With the cost of everything going up, here at TYT, we're always trying to help you guys out and save you some money. Your cell phone bill is the last place you should be getting ripped off. But if you're with Verizon or AT&T, chances are you're way overpaying for the plan you're on. That's why TYT is teaming up with Noble Mobile, the only cell phone plan that pays you to use your phone less. With their Noble plan, get unlimited data for only $50 a month. But the real game changer is the cash back you get for your unused data. The less data you use, the more cash back you get. It's a win-win. Stop letting big wireless rip you off. Choose a company that aligns with your values and isn't trying to milk you for every last cent. And by switching to Noble, you're directly supporting TYT in our mission of bringing you honest, independent news. So give Noble a try and make the switch today. Scan the QR code on the screen now or visit go.tyt.com/plan. That's go.tyt.com/plan.
This is not what anxiety should be rested on. You should be able to afford a home and food. You should not worry about getting sick or injured. That's the bare minimum anywhere in the world. We're supposed to be the best, we're supposed to be the strongest, the most respected. This is not how the American people would feel under not just a golden age, silver, copper, whatever you want to call it. This is bad, and it's translating up to how people evaluate Donald Trump. And so, Donald, you say that you don't understand. Maybe start watching our show more. I'll explain it to you. Anyway, when it comes to Trump, I want to remind everyone of this. This is a poll we showed a couple of days ago, I believe. I just like it. So it's not just the policies, it's him too. People do not have confidence in Donald Trump on a number of different measures, including the idea that he would act ethically in office. Only 21% of Americans are very confident he will act ethically in office. And those are, let's just acknowledge it, either the 21% most gullible people that have ever lived on earth, or they're just lying. They know he's not ethical, but they don't care. They either think that other things about him outweigh it, or they like that he's doing unethical stuff. There are some Americans who, for some reason, get off on the idea that he could just steal $10 billion in taxpayer money and give it to himself. I don't know why, but that's what they think. And so, focusing again on the economy, things are not going in the right direction. Inflation is up compared to last year. The US companies have announced the most job cuts for any January since 2009. It's worse than it was in the darkest, dankest depths of the pandemic. That's how bad things are getting. And remember, like doing all the tariffs and stuff was supposed to hurt us economically, but it was supposed to spur job growth because we're supposed to, well, we're not gonna be hiring people abroad, right? So we need to build the factories here, we need to hire people here. Then why is it doing the exact opposite thing? Last month, companies announced over 108,000 job cuts. That itself was a 118% increase from a year earlier back under Joe Biden. The report on Thursday showed that hiring intentions slid 13% from a year earlier to just 5,300 jobs. And that is terrible. And look, I'm sure it's a combination of a lot of things. The economic damage he's doing to corporations, not just in terms of, it's not just that we can't afford things because we have to buy it abroad. Because of all the reciprocal tariffs, our companies are having a much harder time selling things abroad. That hurts them and that trickles down into job cuts and lower hiring. But also remember, some of the stuff about AI replacing jobs, it isn't yet as apocalyptic as some of the belief was a year or two ago, but we are still losing jobs as a result of it, and Donald Trump loves that. Donald Trump wants us to be the best in AI, should kick all these workers out, and all of his buddies, all of his big donors love it too. Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and Altman, and all of them love it. Every job that they can kill and replace with one of their AI agents or whatever, they consider to be a great thing, and they paid him handsomely to produce that. Well, I was gonna say regulatory environment, but it's a deregulatory environment. In fact, stopping their desires to stop states from regulating AI in literally any way. So look, it's a complicated picture. People hate Donald Trump's policy guts for a lot of reasons, but this is certainly some ones that rank highly.